apologize for this slight delay. We had technical difficulties, but are we about ready to start? Am I live?
Yes, go ahead.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for coming to the February 18th, 2021 Poverty and Homeless Member all-member meeting. And we have a full agenda today. We have a couple things to update, and I welcome everybody here. Before we start with introductions, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Hazel Day and Ivory McEwen, the first two known homeless deaths in our area this year. Thank you for that. I personally knew Hazel for multiple years, and I was able to encounter her through our street outreach. A lot of what I proposed for Springfield needs and community needs has been influenced by meeting and serving and working with her. So too many too soon, and the work we do is important. What we do here saves lives. So thank you everybody for taking the time today to being here. With that in mind, let's do a quick round of introductions. I'm Chris McAllister. I'm chair of the Poverty and Homelessness Board, and I have lived experience. I serve in the lived experience seat. Can we have our electeds go through, and then our community members?
Good afternoon. I'm Lucy Dennis, Mayor of Eugene.
Deborah Daly, Eugene Forte School District, and St. Vincent de Paul.
Pat Farr, Board of County Commissioners.
Sean Van Gordon, Mayor of Springfield.
Cliff Harold, Sheriff.
Thank you. Now may I have the service providers?
Julie Weisman with Women's Space.
John Ranch, Oregon Department of Human Services.
Paul Solomon, sponsors.
Rick Kincaid, Medical Director, Community Health Centers.
Bob Keeter, Science Outreach Services.
Shelter Care.
Austin Martinez, St. Vincent de Paul, Housing Director.
Tim Black, St. Vincent de Paul.
Cindy Perry with Lane Workforce Partnership.
Hearing no more providers, can I have staff please introduce yourselves?
Alex Drew, Lane County staff.
Steve Manella, Human Services Manager for Lane County.
Catherine Ryan, Human Services Division.
Teresa, Human Services Division.
Sarai Johnson. Excuse me. Sarai Johnson, hi.
Diana Aldridge, HSD.
James Ewell, HSD.
Erin Fifield with the City of Springfield.
Lauren Krieger, County Commissioner.
Excellent. Thank you, all of the government folks, all of our staff, all of our community partners and agencies who help make this possible. May I please get a review of the agenda and a motion and second to approve, barring any changes?
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
That was Paul Solomon?
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second it. Lucy Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor Venice. The minutes have been motioned and seconded. Can we have a vote? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please signify by saying nay. Hearing none, motion passes. Minutes are approved. Thank you very much, folks. Our agenda has multiple items. One is winter strategies, trying to follow up where we've been as a board, going through our recommendations and seeing what the county currently has going on. Then there will be a update on rate assistance. The Oregon legislature, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion utilizing some of Steve Manila's experience and current knowledge of bills in session, followed up by tax and stimulus payments, some resources for our advocates. Going to do a couple committee updates. We will have public comment, and then if time warrants, we will have a space for providers who are providing services to either give an update or let us know a concern. So if that's good for everybody here, I'd like to invite Catherine Ryan to please speak on winter strategies.
Hi there. Sorry, I'm gonna send something over to Alex really quick so that she can pull it up. Apologies. So I'm gonna kind of combine winter and general shelter into one update, if that is okay with everybody. So you don't have to go in and come back. So, and because it's all, and part of that is it's all kind of one thing at this point. So the document that Alex is going to be pulling up is a summary, and we can get this out by email to folks as well, because it has quite a bit of information in it. But it is basically an overview of all the new programs, units, beds that have come online sort of in the last several months. And this is both part winter and part COVID response. It really is both of those things at this point. We're anticipating, hopefully, that many of these will go beyond the winter season as well. So I'll just really quick, I'm gonna go through this pretty quick, but I'm happy to, answer questions that anyone has. And like I said, we'll send this out as a follow-up as well. But we do have our emergency motel shelter that St. Vincent de Paul is running that has been going since November. Shelter Care and Carry It Forward also have kind of smaller unit number shelters that have been going and are going great. The St. Vincent de Paul, we ended up placing a number of the pallet shelters out at kind of the Dustidon and Lindholm Center site that are creating additional shelter capacity. They had to go down with the congregate shelter because of COVID. So we just kind of added in some more space there. The community supported shelters and Square One Village, these are the rest stops and microsites that are through the operations are being funded by City of Eugene, and then the county is funding the services component. So you can kind of see there that those are getting up and running. A lot of them are really, really close if they're not quite there yet. And they're anticipating that the remaining rest stops, which are the larger kind of 15 unit sites, will be ready to go by the end of March. And then, yeah, the 2 microsites that Square One have folks moving into them and already in there. For youth, we have 1 pallet shelter site at First United Methodist. They started moving folks in yesterday. So that is on its way, which is really exciting. We were kind of struggling a little bit there, but figured out a plan. And then on the next page, we have a couple programs for families. We are doing, this one really is just for winter. Catholic Community Services is doing a motel stay, sort of not just like on Egan nights, but for the full winter season. And they've been continuing to add families in as there have been rooms that they've been able to add in. And then we have 2 pallet shelter sites that are going to support a total of 9 families, and 6 pallet shelters that have gone out to the annex to help both provide sort of safe places, since that is more of a congregate shelter. If they have anyone who screens positive for COVID, they have a place that they can go and still have a spot to sleep for the night. And then they're also able to use those just for, again, kind of additional capacity if there are folks who are maybe having a hard time in the more congregate setting. And then we ended up using a number of the pallet shelters for rural winter warming programs in communities across the county. And all of them, except for Florence, have activated at this point. Florence is ready to go. They just haven't quite gotten to that point yet. And there's some, we'll try and pull together, there's some really wonderful just pictures and messages from, in particular, Cottage Grove and Florence of the experience that they've had with kind of setting up these sites and the community support. It's pretty amazing. And then in development, we have a couple more microsites probably coming that we're working on. We are close to bringing on another motel shelter for adults with a number of rooms. We're not quite there yet, but I think in the next couple weeks we should have more information on that. And then we have a pallet shelter site in Springfield that we've been working on that'll be going in front of council next week. And then this also includes a more general update about Egan. We've been close, you know, quite a few times in the last couple weeks, but it just hasn't reached the threshold for activation. And so this update just sort of talks about it, you know, sort of sites. We've worked through Tim and the team has worked through some of the complications around having available sites. Having volunteers is still a really big challenge, and just the logistics with COVID of having people spread out across multiple sites. So there's still a lot of challenges there. In Springfield, there's one site that has been going, and there is a spot in Glenwood that they've been doing some work on the building, and it's kind of getting, I think, close to being ready to activate also. So there's a lot of work happening there, and I know that they've been working really hard to work through all of the complicating factors that are there this year, and working really closely with public health also. They're now set up that if they have someone who screens positive screens positive on the COVID screening, they're connected with Occupy Medical and the River Avenue facility to be able to do rapid testing, to have folks go out there. So we're feeling a lot better about kind of the safety concerns there. And then the last update that I have is that in response, I was getting a lot of questions from folks about what, you know, how you get into these no programs, what's happening, where do we see it? And so we ended up putting together a website that the URL is really simple. It's lanecounty.org/shelter. And this can be shared out to folks in the community. It's organized by kind of household type / population. And within each of these, it has information about what the, you know, kind of the programs are, how you access them, how you get more information. These are really intended to be, these are programs that basically anyone can sort of self-refer into. So you don't need to have like a referral through a certain program. There may be additional criteria that are there that you need to meet, but it's something that an individual or like a case manager working with someone could contact any of these and kind of find out what availability in the process is. So hoping that that will be useful for folks. And I'm the one who's kind of keeping that updated and keeping track of. So if there are any omissions or changes or anything, anyone can always reach out to me. Okay, that was me talking a lot. So I'm happy to answer questions about anything I touched on, or actually the other thing I will say is the shelter subcommittee group. We have been working on our work plan and are going to be coming back to that to kind of move forward in our meeting next week. And that does include a fair bit around winter planning for next year. So just kind of letting everyone know that that is already on our radar. I think as soon as Egan is over, we're going to be diving into it. So it is part of the plan.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate this presentation. I have 3 questions for you, if I may.
Yeah.
The shelter website, do we have that same information in flyer or pamphlet form for those who are not currently having access to internet or who are taking advantage of some of these emergency services that we're talking about?
That is a good point. No, I have not put together anything, but I'm happy to work with our PIO and kind of put something that we could, feels like maybe we could put it up on the site so folks could download and print it, but then also have printed copies available that people can use.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you for that. Also, in October of 2018, this body passed a resolution talking about using data to help inform our next year's winter strategies. I was curious, do we have in the shelter committee, I was unable to make that meeting yesterday, I apologize. Did we have any updates on like how we're implementing the point in time count, or how much of the current layout that we're using is utilizing that data from our current shelter needs?
In terms of, sorry, can you go through that one more time for me?
For winter, we used to we said that we want to use things like the point in time count and a homeless by name list to help inform our shelter decisions. So if we know that we need so many medically fragile beds, so many Spanish speaking beds, so many youth beds between 18 and 24, in par with the shelter that we had asked about that same year.
Got it. Yeah, I think that as we move forward with winter planning, that will be part of it. I think there is very much an intention to talk with a number of different folks who are in different parts of that system also, and get feedback and figure out what we learned this year and what we can carry forward. And I love data, so I think the degree that which we can use HMIS, the homeless by name list, our unit inventory utilization, all of those pieces will be part of informing that.
So, and the last question was kind of tucked in to the previous statement. We had asked that there be a 16 to 24, 18 to 24 style shelter. Are any of the units that were mentioned for youth in that spectrum?
Yes. So the 6 pallet shelters are for the 18 to 24 range.
Excellent. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else with questions for Catherine on this committee update, winter strategies update? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair. Catherine, a little bit of a question, but more just an accolade toward you. I'm looking at the homeless shelters in Lane County website, and that is very thorough. I know a lot of work went into that. And for the members of the board, if you've not taken a look at that, the questions come up quite frequently: where can I go, or where can I send someone, or what are you doing? And this website really does give a pretty thorough listing of the sites that Lane County and our partner governments and agencies are providing. So good job on that, Catherine. And I wanted to mention that you're also staffing the shelter and what was the Shelter and Supportive Housing Subcommittee. It's now the Shelter Stakeholder Subcommittee. And I wanted to say that you're doing a great job there, and remind the board that there's a new chair of that committee, which is Kristen London. I've been the chair of that committee until about a month ago, and Kristen is doing a really good job of working that committee. So we meet next Thursday, and a lot of the discussion that Catherine is engaging in right now, and also you'll hear from Soraya a little bit later, a lot of that will be a part of the discussion at the Shelter Stakeholder Committee next Thursday. Catherine, once again, I didn't really have a question for you other than you mentioned that Florence isn't quite online yet. And I was down there actually talking to some tribal members. And do you know how the sites in Florence are going to be, how the occupants are going to be selected?
Yeah, so Florence, they are ready to go. They just, because it's for cold weather, they haven't reached their activation protocol since they've been set up. But it'll be similar to an Egan style program where it's first come, first served when they activate. And they've got a number of shelters there, so I think that they're going to be able to support any of the folks that come in.
Thank you, Catherine. And Chair, one thing I will mention, at the start of the meeting, you talked about the 2 most recent homeless people who suffered and died on the streets here in Lane County. That is something that happens every year. We know that the numbers that trigger activation of Egan are not the numbers that trigger fatalities. It doesn't have to get that cold. On days when it's 38 degrees and the rain's going in sideways, you know that that is a dangerous situation. So our work here is continues to push towards shelter for people, not just on the Egan activation nights, but around the clock. Thank you very much for the time, Chair.
Thank you very much for those comments, Commissioner. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this topic before we move forward on the agenda? We do have some conversation going on in the chat. Mr. Solomon mentioned a critique of the point in time count as represented by the New York Times, I believe. And there was also a request for the documents that Catherine mentioned, which Alex answered that they will be sent to everybody in email after the meeting. So thank you everybody for contributing on that note. Let's time check. Let's jump forward. Can I see the agenda, please? Where am I at? Sorry, I'm still getting used to the new layout that's not on my phone, so I'm trying to jump back. There we go. We have rent assistance in Lane County with Alex Dreer.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Alex Greer. I am Lane County staff, and I'm going to give you an overview of rent assistance in Lane County, where we are right now. I'm pulling something up on the screen that, along with the other documents we're reviewing today, will be emailed to all members and attendees after the meeting. Well, so rent assistance programs. Our nonprofit partners are currently working diligently to process existing applications. These are the funding sources that I'm highlighting. Can you see my highlights? Yes, you can. That they're currently using to process to pay people's rent. So that's CVRRP CARES, those are care funds from the state of Oregon, Community Development Block Grant funds, Coronavirus from the Eugene and Springfield entitlement cities, Affordable Housing Trust Fund from the city of Eugene, and we also have a West for Rent Assistance program. If you know anybody who needs rent assistance, rent or utility assistance in the city of West Fir, please have them email me. We have a limited amount of funds that are just for people who live in the city limits. And here are two upcoming large dollar rent assistance programs that we hope to have online soon, and we will have more information available as the decisions are made, but I want to direct everyone that our website, lanecounty.org/rent, now has an option to sign up for email updates. So when we have more information to share about when an application will open, you will be emailed. So feel free to go to our website and sign up for those email updates. And if people ask you, when is the application going to open again, you can direct them to sign up for the email updates. So the first funding source that we will be spending for rent assistance, this is rent assistance only, not utilities, is called Supporting Tenants Accessing Rent Relief, or STAR. That comes from the State of Oregon General Fund. Our allocation is approximately $4 million. And these funds must be spent by June 30th, so the end of the fiscal year. And on the screen, you can see our nonprofit partners who are going to help us spend these funds and get these to the people who need them. Steve, did you have anything to add about STAR?
No, thank you.
Okay. And the next source of funding is Emergency Rent Relief Lane County. We locally call it ERRLC. You might have heard it called Emergency Rental Assistance. That is the Department of Treasury funds that was allocated in the stimulus bill that was signed into law by Congress in December 2020. I'm trying to think, what year is it already? So that was from December 2020. We have been allocated $11.4 million. This is for rent and utility assistance. Those funds can be spent by the end of the calendar year, December 30th, but we must spend 65% by the end of September, or else the Department of Treasury may repossess some of those funds, recapture them, and distribute them to other communities. So also, if we spend 65% of our allocation by September 30th, we might get some of the recaptured funds to have more resources in our community for rent assistance and utility assistance. And here are our partners who are helping us distribute the funds. It's the same partners as have been helping us with other rent assistance programs, but you will notice the addition of Homes for Good, who helped us in the very, very beginning with rent assistance, and Looking Glass, they're a new partner for these funds. So that's very exciting. And I want to mention this is also on our website, lanecounty.org/rent, but these programs are for people who have incomes of 80% area median income or below. And that threshold, the amount of income you can have, differs based on your household size, and we have that chart on our website. Now I'm available for questions.
Do we have any questions for Miss Alex? Yes, Steve.
Yeah, I wanted to provide some additional information. So as you see, we have approximately about $15.5 million here. Additionally, we're going to get an allocation that's a part of the state of Oregon's $208 million allocation. So there'll be another block of money that we'll receive from the state of Oregon that we'll be getting notification of soon, that will be in addition to this with the same time frame as the emergency rent relief. It's Department of Treasury funding. And then concurrently, Homes for Good is managing the Landlord Relief Program, which was approved by the legislature, which is a $15 million program for landlords who want to sign up to get relief for back payment. They have to, the tenant has to be willing to participate. And in that program, the landlord has to be willing to take a 20% reduction in what they're owed in order to be paid up to date. But that's being administered by the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority program, the state of Oregon will be putting up a website for the landlord program, and it will be one website. For Lane County programs, we have a portal we put up when the programs are open. And so as soon as we make the announcement of the programs opening again, that portal will be up, as well as we're sorting out our coordination issues with the state of Oregon around their additional Department of Treasury funds, whether we'll use our portal or their portal as the place for people to go to sign up for that assistance. So it's just a big wave of help for people, and it's a really heavy load. And as Alex said, we're very appreciative of all the organizations. In addition to all of these organizations, I wanted to mention that Lane County does provide internally support for folks who have been identified through public health as being COVID positive and needing to isolate and are in need of rent assistance, as well as we have a direct tie with our Lane County workforce program as well for referrals to rent assistance. So I think I covered all of the rest of the pieces.
Dr. Kincaid, would you please ask Steve your question, and then I'll call on Mayor Van Gordon.
Yeah, Steve, I just wanted to get an idea of the relative portion of the need that will be met by these funding mechanisms. Are there projections, or it seems like, wow, this is a significant amount of money, but it could be potentially a drop in the bucket. I don't know the proportional need. So do you have some ideas on how much of the need this will meet?
That's a very good question, and I know what we do know, and Alex can maybe give you information with more precision that we've showed before. With the previous 7 million plus that we received and dispensed, we still have a waiting list of people who, when we last opened up the application in November, we have people who are waiting to be served that will be the first people who we'd reach out to for the STAR program. How many people do we still have, Alex, who haven't been served from the November opening?
It's around 350.
350 households. So I know there are some
Yes.
statewide figures on, the amount of rent arrears, and the thing that we're all racing against is that, we'll have to settle up when the federal and state rental moratoriums are lifted. And we know that in the bill that the president's proposing, there's another $25 billion of emergency rental assistance. So Lane County and the state of Oregon would get another chunk of money, and perhaps it would be for a different time frame. So again, I'll try to, Alex, if we can try to look for that data and get it out to folks. Some of the projections have been done, like I said, on a statewide basis.
Cool. Thank you, Steve. Dr. Kincaid, Mayor Van Gordon.
Thanks, Dr. Kincaid, for asking the question I had as well. So the other question that I had is, this is probably the biggest challenge we're facing, or one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. So how are we sort of just trying to keep our head above water, or is there some conversation about what that end game strategy looks like? Because like the national and state policy sort of keeps pushing the due date, if you will, down the road. And I'm just interested if there's started to be conversation among the providers or Lane County staff about how do we get past, what does the end game of this look like? Because it's going to get really hard here.
Mayor Van Gordon, I think that those discussions are good ones for us to have. I think that what we have been doing is working with our state and federal funding partners, and then with the local governments in trying to get this rent relief out as quickly as we can. And given the magnitude of this problem, it's it really forces us at a local level to look towards the federal and state government to help with solutions. I do think that and this is something that's on the agenda of work that Sarai is working on with us regionally, which is the landlord engagement. So I think that, perhaps there's some work to do to see, once we get all these series of resources in, if there's a way that we can gauge locally, what we believe the unmet need is, so that we can use that in our advocacy with the federal and state government.
I think that would be really helpful, especially as being one of the city partners here, is to be able to have, even if it's directionally correct, to be able to describe at our legislative level how big we think the gap is.
Commissioner Farr. Thank you, Mayor Van Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. And, mine is a relatively simple question. We still have a waiting list from November. My question, Steve, is how are we making it easy for people to know how to sign up for the assistance that is available to them? Now, let me preface that a little bit, or post-space that a little bit. Quite often it's the people who are the best at navigation that get the limited funding, and the people who aren't as good. Sometimes it's older people, sometimes it's people with less intuition, and sometimes it's people without equipment. How do we make it easy for people to sign up? What are we doing?
You want to cover that, Alex?
Yes, well, we have learned from how we've had applications open in the past, and we are continually brainstorming how we can make it more accessible. We have the option, when an application is open, people can call the Lane County COVID hotline, and someone will help them over the phone in English or Spanish to complete the application online. Providers also help people who call in to fill out the application online. And in particular for the emergency rent relief Lane County funds, that's the Department of Treasury funds. That calls for prioritization of people who are the lowest income, so 50% area median income and below, and who are currently unemployed and have been unemployed for 90 days.
Thank you for that explanation. I'm going to further push on this a little bit, but let's say somebody calls Mayor Vinnis or Mayor Van Gordon or me and said, how do I sign up? How do I respond to them? Well, you know, is there a very simple one step that they can do? Now, Ms. Dry, Alex, you're saying that people call the hotline. How do they know what the number is for the hotline? Where do they get the information? And how do they know if they're eligible? These are the questions that we receive quite frequently. And once again, the people who are good at navigation are the ones who get in line first. And it's not always the people who have the greatest need. So just real quickly, how do people know to call the hotline? How do they know where to find the forms, etc.?
I hear that, Commissioner Farr. So if anywhere on our website, lanecounty.org, at the top, if you're clicking coronavirus, that's on the top of every web page. You will go to a coronavirus web page. And if you scroll down, there is a number. The hotline number is on here. Let's see, how easy is it for us to find? The non-emergency call center is here. So unfortunately, it does the main ways that people can help. If they're calling you, you can go to our website and tell them verbally, or if they are able to access the internet, they are able to look at our website. So here's the non-emergency call center. Also, if you go to our website, www.lanecounty.org/rent, maybe I typed it in correctly. Nope, I misspelled it. Isn't this fun to watch me type? And if you scroll down, you can sign up to receive an email update and be notified in advance when we have a date that the application will be open.
Okay. Thanks, Alison. Alex, excuse me. And my point here is that I'm talking. An 87-year-old man called me this morning, and at 87, he's obviously got a great deal of experience in life. But one thing he does not have experience with. One thing he doesn't have experience with is what you just did. And when I try to fumble through it, I find myself wondering which step to press and which button to go to. And I'm just wondering if our IT department or somebody can help us to make it really obvious, just a single click. And I'm not faulting anybody at this point in time, because all of this is novel to us as we try to steer people into the services that they need. But there's a great deal of anxiety, particularly with people who don't have the navigation skills. And as I've said quite often, it's older people or people who have the least experience and access with online services. So, and once again, I'm not looking for answers right now, but as we move forward, just finding ways for the gentleman who called me this morning or anybody else to be able to intuitively find the information without having to know which button to push. So once again, no fault I'm finding, just a need that we do have. Thanks, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Vinnis, and then I have a clarity question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to follow up. I want to thank Commissioner Farr for his questions, which were kind of aligned with my own. But the other concern I have is the sort of first come, first serve basis of wanting to make sure that you mentioned that people at the lowest income levels would be prioritized. So I'm wondering how that's actually working. I mean, I do worry about the 87-year-old man who might lose a day or two just trying to figure out how to get through the system and then lose his chance if it's first come, first serve, or our communities of color or people who English is not their first language, any number of reasons why people might not be the fastest to get on that first come, first serve list.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Alex, you said 50% of the regional, could you please repeat that stat? And do you have an idea about what that number looks like?
Yes, so when I reference that, that is of the Department of Treasury funds that we are allocated. When the application opens, anyone who is 50% area median income or below or currently unemployed will be prioritized. So what that means is that based on all the applications, we first sort by income and if you are currently unemployed, and we'll serve you first. What you're looking at in front of you is the 80% AMI area median income. I don't have the 50% breakdown readily available.
Okay. And how often do they make that? Do they make that every year? Is that something that they issue at the beginning of the year or the end of the year? Do you know?
It's usually updated within the beginning of the year, but we don't have a 2021 area median income yet. I can say 2020 was the same as 2019.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your hard work and your attention to these items. Both poverty and homelessness are vital parts of this body, and there's one without when we don't address the other. So thank you very much, Alex, and everybody at HST for working on this. Are there any questions further for Alex on this topic, or can we move on to the legislation update from Steve? Seeing no hands,
Chris,
sorry, Paul.
I've got a quick question. This is a follow-up on Mayor Venus's comments. I'm curious what strategies we're employing specifically to reach out to communities of color that are disproportionately impacted by the economic conditions.
Thank you. And I also want to add that as some providers put in our chat, there are other ways that we get information out. For example, Bob Teeter at Sayusla Outreach Services in Florence noted that they announce resources in the local newspaper and radio, contact DHS, the school districts and clubs, and they also ask people to just call their office and allow, last I heard, some walk-in assistance as well. And then if you call the Lane County main line, our administrative assistant, Diana Aldridge, will help people navigate and give them different numbers and information that they can find out. And to your question of how we get these resources out there and how we do affirmative outreach, we often couple with how public health is doing their outreach. So public health can give us direct referrals. And from what it's my understanding that public health is having some success reaching out with communities of color through faith-based organizations. So we will piggyback on that as well. We also use radio, media, print, and other methods to get the word out there. We also have our partners like Senior and Disability Services, the utility companies getting information out there. So just for example, in Westford, for our specific Westford Rent Assistance and Utility Assistance Program, the water company sent everybody out a flyer in there with their bill.
Thank you, Alex. Did that answer your question, Paul? Excellent. Looking around, not seeing any hands raised. Oh, Julie.
I just had a quick question. I was perusing the site on Rent, and I noticed that I was trying to see about Spanish language translations. And I'm noticing, and I'm not a fluent Spanish speaker or reader, but I believe what it says at the top of that page, that if you want this translated in Spanish, to go to Google Translate. as most Spanish speakers know, Google Translate is not the document, not the place to go for, it has problems with certain words. And so I'm just wondering, I noticed that Synthro is one of the partners. Is it at all unreasonable for the county to maybe utilize their translated documents to maybe post here for linkage instead of sending people to Google? So I'm just trying to see if we could help a little bit better.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie. That's actually a really good point. What this says is if you would like to use Google Translate, what we have is a translate button on the bottom right corner of our website. So I'm going to show you where it is and what that looks like. So then you go to the bottom of our website and you click translate. So that's an automatic tool our website has. Oh, see, I can't do so many things at once. Boop, boop, boop. You click it and then different languages come up and it uses Google Translate to translate the entire web page. We do specifically contract with Centro Latino Americano for to help Spanish-speaking individuals.
I was just asking, really, I appreciate that you've done all this, is that we've struggled at our agency of just translating the word advocate, as it doesn't translate in the Spanish language. And so we have to come up with something that works. And so there's nuanced words that simply just don't translate correctly. And so we try to use our providers who are bicultural and bilingual. So that would be just something that I think would make it even more accessible when we know that there's a large portion of our community that are Latinx that struggle with the language and need to access these services. So it would just be my suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that conversation. And we also learned a little bit more about our resources that the county is providing. So it's a twofer. Excellent, Alex. With Commissioner Farr, did you want to say something?
Just one thing quickly, Alex, when you guide us step by step through the website, that is really helpful. Good job just now. I just followed you, hit the translate button, and clear as a bell. It happens very, very quickly. Thank you. That particularly for people who weren't born with the computer savvy, as the most recent generation have, it's good to get stepped through. So thank you very much. Good job.
So thank you very much. Steve, are you ready for the legislative portion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the Oregon 2021 legislative session is upon us. I want to give some background around legislative work and how we process that in local government, and sort of talk about also the role of advisory committees. As our chair has reminded me, one of the goals that we had in our strategic plan was around advocacy and legislative advocacy for the Poverty and Homelessness Board. And, unfortunately, this year, in advance of the legislative session, with our response to COVID-19 and then wildfires, that's something that staff hasn't been able to spend a whole lot of time on. We've been responding to the need in front of us, but there are a number of very good bills and a lot of legislation that is around homelessness and housing and mental illness and other things. And I'm just going to go over some main ones that really focus on some of the pieces that we talk about here at the Poverty and Homelessness Board. The first one is House Bill 2006, and that's sponsored by the Speaker of the House. And this is a follow-up from last session's House Bill 2001. And it is a statute that allows for local governments to perform supersiding of shelter sites. And that includes both traditional shelter sites and non-traditional alternative sites. And the current supersiding legislation sunsetted for application. And I do know that in the city of Eugene, I think there were 5 applications that were received, and 4 of them which are still being worked on. And so what this bill would do is it extends and allows for local jurisdictions to cite shelters between now and July of 2022. This allows a jurisdiction to bypass some of the local zoning and land use requirements and focus on health and safety in and going through a process of submitting applications to the state of Oregon for supersiding of shelters. This also includes one of the sites is the 100 River Avenue site that currently the county is using for COVID-19. That is been under discussion for use in the future once the pandemic has resided, and for a navigation center and 75-bed shelter. Additionally, there is also language about potentially funding navigation centers for capital improvements and for operations and for services. But this bill 2006 does not contain any money. It does designate that a navigation shelter site, one of the 5 in the bill is a navigation center site in Lane County in the city of Eugene. So that makes potentially, if in the budget bill they put money in the budget for that purpose, it would mean that money would be available then for a navigation center in Lane County in the city of Eugene. So that's that one. I think I'm going to run through these and then take questions if that works for everyone.
Yes, sir.
And then House Bill 2100. If you go to the legislative site right now, it's a placeholder, so you don't see that anything's there. But this bill is in Legislative Council and will be coming out for hearing in the beginning of March. It adds language to the statute for homelessness and community action agencies, and adds language around funding culturally responsive organizations. And it proposes reducing the funding to counties and community action agencies by 20% to achieve that goal. What's being proposed is to take 20% of the funding in the second part of the biennium and make it available for a statewide competitive application for culturally responsive organizations. This is a bill that, on one hand, I think all of us are very supportive of culturally responsive organizations, supporting them and supporting the people that they serve. But on the other hand, this would reduce our emergency housing account funding and our state homeless assistance funding that comes to us by 20%, up to 20%. And so that's one that we want to watch and try to come up with a better compromise that doesn't reduce existing services and adds to the ability to serve those populations. House Bill 2163 is pretty straightforward. It's a bill that would fund long-term rental assistance for former foster youth. Again, that transition from being in foster care to being out in the community, and people have advocated for a long time to have greater resources available for long-term supports for those youth as they leave their foster homes and become adults. House Bill 2427 that's sponsored by Representative Nathanson, and it's a universal rental application. This would be a voluntary program. There would be a application. The idea is that someone who is seeking rental housing would pay a fee once during a 90-day period and wouldn't have to pay a second fee if they went to another property management company. Again, the way that Rep. Nathanson is setting this up, it would be voluntary on the part of property management companies and landlords to abide by this. But basically, if somebody would be approved in the universal rental application, it would mean that all the kinds of issues that people look for in considering renters would be done that way. And that's a great barrier for housing for a lot of the people that we work with, because they end up having to pay multiple rental applications, oftentimes even with not being able to get into one of those units, and those are non-refundable. The House Bill 3115 is again sponsored by Tina Kotek, and that bill would establish a statewide statute for implementation of the Boise Supreme Court Boise case. And it's known as the sitting, sleeping, and laying on public property. And what it would do also is it would provide both injunctive relief and other types of relief. So a homeless individual could sue a local government, and under this law, it would say that if they met the conditions of the statute, that that jurisdiction would have to pay them damages, and so that's a interesting one. It's something we've talked about locally in relationship to the cities and counties and how we respond to the Boise case. And what this legislation would do would put all cities and counties in the state of Oregon in having to respond in a similar manner. House Bill 4002 is a long-term rental assistance study bill. And that's really looking at having something akin to a state Section 8 program that would go alongside the federal rental subsidy program and be administered by local housing authorities. And then House Bill 5011, that's the Oregon Housing Community Services budget bill. And that's in that budget bill, we're hoping that that $50 million will be budgeted again for the State Homeless Assistance Program and the Emergency Housing Account. Those are two major funding sources for the work that we do around homelessness. And then finally, Senate Bill 5505, it's permanent supportive housing. Part of our strategy regionally is to get 350 units of permanent supportive housing. And as a part of that, during this last biennium, Homes for Good and Lane County, along working with Shelter Care, benefited from these funds during the last round of funding. There was $50 million during this biennium, and the project that's being built for families at the Lane County Fairground is being financed by the Permanent Supportive Housing Fund. So those are some of the bills. There's many more, but those are the ones that I thought would be a major interest to this group. So I'll take any questions or any discussion of any of these.
I'm not seeing any hands up currently. Steve, some of these bills look kind of like repeats from the 2018-2019 legislative session. I know that there's a lot of interest in trying to help normalize supports for access to housing and a lot of stabilization efforts. Can you share how the conversation's been going on about getting operational support for people? Because we got a lot of siting stuff, even all the way back from 2019, which seems so long ago, when we had the bill that expanded transitional campgrounds. We said we needed extra siting help, we need extra support, but we got that support, and we haven't seen any of these places cited under that jurisdiction. Can you share how we can help advise or talk to local governments about utilizing those permissions?
So what I would say is that, currently, I think I mentioned before, the city of Eugene has been working with Lane County around 100 River Avenue in getting that cited as a shelter. St. Vincent de Paul also has applications for their family annex on Amazon and are looking to construct additional units on that site for families. St. Vincent de Paul also has the current Dusk to Dawn site, which the hope is long-term to develop units of some sort on the site where there currently are tents. And then the final site that went under that application was the current St. Vincent de Paul Lindholm Center, which is an access center, and it's a bank building. Originally, it was built as a bank building, and St. Vincent de Paul would like to long-term take the existing building down and redevelop that. So those are all of the ones that are in place, and then of course, there's been a lot of work done locally by the cities and by the county to cite alternative camps. So I think we're making progress, and I think this state relief on citing is is very helpful to us. It helps with some of the issues around some of the technicalities with zoning and land use, and it also helps in the case of local government advocating for this type of housing and some of our NIMBY issues.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. If I can clarify real quick, Lucy, and then I'll get to you. I believe I see us having siting access. It's just when we talk to providers and we talk to local governments, we hear that operations dollars are what's missing. Operations is what's missing in terms of the supports. We can't utilize these sites because we don't have enough staff. We don't have enough program dollars for that. I know that we've been blessed by some of the COVID dollars coming in to help shore up some things and support some things, but I guess my reframing of my original question is, we have had several years of citing bills go through the House and the Senate. Now that we have citing and have at least some pictures of ways we can utilize citing, how are we going to ask for operations dollars? How are we going to ask for program dollars that help get people from the street all the way to this new housing, to these new models that are opening up? Do we have anything in the works that is currently being discussed in this legislative session, or that we are looking to put forward towards that? And then after you answer that, I'd like to ask Mayor Venice to speak.
What I can tell you is that the two bills that are at the bottom of this list include operations and service funding, and the Permanent Supportive Housing Fund has provided a stipend for operations. The Speaker of the House, and I think I can send out the Housing Alliance material, but the Speaker of the House is trying to put into the budget $140 million in a very tight financial environment. And one of the things that legislators are balancing is the fact that, you know, the state is receiving a lot of assistance right now from the federal government. And should they use state dollars to do that now, or should they just use the federal dollars that they're getting during COVID? And then when the economy comes back, look at state revenues again. So that's sort of the, that's sort of where the discussion is at. And that all happens around the budget bills towards the end of the session. And that's like that Senate Bill 5505 for permanent supportive housing. Speaker of the House and the co-chairs in the last several sessions have proposed additional dollars for shelter and housing operation as a part of the what do they call it, Pat? The going home bill in the legislature, but
take home.
So it's not, you won't see it as a part of any of these bills, but it's something that if you're interested, what I can do is I can send out the material that the Speaker Kotek has put out around what she would like to see. But that really is a process, that can be advocated for, and ultimately the co-chairs and the leadership of the legislature, end up needing to get a 2/3 majority to do that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Steve. Madam Mayor?
Yeah, actually, I really just wanted to kind of reinforce and follow up on your questions, Chris, and just a comment, which is, I think, part of our experience right now in the city of Eugene is the large number of people who are unsheltered and who are camping all over our community. And one of our most important responses, I think, right now, given that we don't have shelter beds or safe places for them to sleep, is the outreach that we can do and the connection of services and the providing. And, it's actually the extension of what the city and the county look at as the TAC report in terms of those folks who are camping now. Ultimately, we want them on a pathway that comes from camping in Westmoreland Park that finds them through the shelter or through our providers, and skipping the shelter and getting onto services. And I had suggested in our meeting last month that the Shelter Stakeholder Committee might take some time after this winter to sort of look at how this urban camping policy in the city has worked. What are we learning from that? Where are we not doing well? And that maybe this body could use that to sort of inform both how we look at the TAC report, but also how we look going forward at making those bigger requests at the state level and at the federal level, because we're not the only city that's coping with this incredible crisis. And it's operational funds. It's really those teams being able to get out there and supply people. And, we need sites, but short of having adequate sites, we really just need that robust extension of services to people where they are. And we're learning a lot about that now, where we're falling short. And I would just like to see this body continue to advocate for that work.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you. Very briefly, Chair McAllister and Mayor Vinis, thank you for that suggestion regarding the after action report of the Shelter Committee. As you know, Lane County has one of the very best lobbyists in the entire building, which is Alex Kyler. Alex we have a legislative committee that meets pretty regularly during the session and before. And Chris, a lot of the questions that you have can be directed through that legislative committee. The meetings are open-ended. They can be 3 hours in length, where we can talk into detail as to how we can help to influence legislators to make amendments to their bills as they're going through. And we keep track of the ones that are going through. So Alex Kyler, as you all know, is a tremendous lobbyist. And the city of Eugene, the city of Springfield, both also have lobbyists who do a superb job. So we can take a lot of time to work out details of what we'd like to push through the legislature, through our local delegation, and through other members. So Chris, thanks very much. And Steve, thank you for the summary of the bills. We'll be talking about it next week in our legislative committee. The commissioners on our committee are me and Commissioner Bernier, the two commissioners. There are also a number of other people, including the sheriff, who sit on that committee.
I did want to mention that the EHA funds that come from the state general fund do pay for our outreach efforts. So that's the ongoing money that we use for outreach efforts. And I didn't include on this list, but I think that at least the elected officials are probably aware that there are a couple of bills that are around the expansion of cahoots as a strategy to serve people with mental illness who are on the street that will also benefit homeless people.
Thank you, Steve. Madam Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, everyone. I'm still learning and figuring out how everything works and how all the pieces come together. But I just wanted to follow up to what Commissioner Farr just mentioned about our legislative committee. It's my understanding that Alex is phenomenal, but he's a one-man shop. And it's my understanding, and rightly so, that his priority is to work on bills that support the county as an organization and keep us whole and strong, and before programmatic, which of course funding programmatic bills help us deliver the other services. But I'm wondering if the structure of the Poverty and Homelessness Board, if there might be room or an opportunity for us to have a subgroup that is a legislative committee where we can really rally the strength and the robustness of this, what is really a coalition, this board, to advocate and create some strong messaging on these legislative items that speak directly to the mission of this board, rather than relying on our cities and our county lobbyists to do that when their plate is already full with their primary docket of bills to track and lobby on behalf of. Thank you.
I certainly appreciate those comments, Madam Commissioner. We do have 3 parts of our strategic plan. Section 3 is specifically sorted on advocacy, both on the state level, on the local level, and with our community partners. And so I feel like that's one of, like, while we focus on the TAC report, which covers part of our strategic plan 2016 to 2021, it is but a portion of it. And so I really feel like we can shore up as we make our new plan from 2021 to 26, I believe it would be, however it overlaps. I don't know if they skip in numbers. Steve could tell me on that. But I do like that idea, and I think that maybe we should have more conversation on that at our executive committee. If that seems appropriate, I will seek staff advisement on that and member participants. Yep, I see a thumbs up from at least one of our members. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody. So with that in mind, I also want to just draw quickly attention that Representative Lively had been looking around at information regarding a modification of the what we have called the dignified and camp cleanup rules under ORS 203.077-082. We were not able to give feedback before session, but I understand that they're still interested in the feedback of people who are providing support to people who have been swept. By saying sweep, I mean people who have been asked to leave or been told to leave under threat of force from a spot where they were camping, whether it was permitted previously or not. It is an end of stay type of legislation. Some of the concepts that they were seeking our feedback on was whether or not 48 hours was an appropriate extension from a 24. Some people have asked about 72 hours. There's just been, they wanted to be able to have a conversation. And so if there are members of the community who want to, as private citizens, give feedback, I'd be certainly interested in doing that if we do not have the room or space to do so in this current session. They did reach out to us directly as the Poverty and Homelessness Board, knowing that we have a wide variety of people and that we did have a lived experience component as part of our process. It's easy to be able to look at things from our own perspectives, but trying to put ourselves to the shoes of those who have been asked to leave, who don't have their meds and don't have a place to be, is very harrowing. So thank you very much for your update, Steve. I would like to ask quickly if Dr. Kincaid is willing to give or sorry, not Dr. Kincaid, Teresa Rourke, if she's available, to give a quick update on the committee work, and then we can jump into public comment.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Teresa asked me to make some comments, and then Teresa, if you could put your contact information in the chat box, that would be helpful. Obviously, in the interest of time, we're not going to be able to have any substantial dialogue related to the document that was included in your packet, which is a product of the care coordination subgroup of the healthcare committee. And in your packet, pages 9 to 12, there is a copy of our current draft document that will come back actually to this group for formal approval either next month or the next session that we're together in 2 months. And so we wanted opportunity to get in additional input. League has had a chance to look at this, as have the component organizations. The purpose of this agreement is to, in some ways, formalize our relationship and our intention as a healthcare community to partner in improving health outcomes for the unhoused. And there's a real purpose to having some formality to that, because as many of you know, the recent year has been a pretty big distraction for healthcare, and we've spent quite a bit of time managing very small viral particles. And so, we do want to keep this other work moving forward while we're also somewhat distracted by the immediate and urgent sense of the pandemic. So we have several goals in the agreement. The purpose, again, is to really look at that transition, particularly from hospital care, which is now oftentimes straight to the street, which clearly doesn't have good outcomes. And how do we basically coordinate care across our continuum for people who are unhoused? And there's a lot of different aspects to that, and we've spoken in past conversations about that. The goals of the agreement are really to focus on the understanding of the unhoused, even within the healthcare community, to build a respectful and understanding approach, along with reducing stigma, which has substantially changes outcomes when bias exists within in different environments, as we all know. And we really want to work at continue to do that. We want to have coordinated care discharge planning that is very seamless and to the person being and family that's unhoused. We want to create an experience that also helps them to move forward, even despite being ill and having some sort of significant medical event. And that means establishing primary care. It means making sure people get appropriate medications and appropriate support from behavioral health, specialty services, and other types of treatment, along with the support that we would like to get them into stable housing. So our approach is really right around that healthcare element. So we've put those goals in that. In the remainder of the document, we really talk about our core organizational commitments. And all of us in healthcare work in a certain sphere. And so we've outlined sort of the key aspects around inpatient care, both on the physical medicine and the behavioral health medicine side, as well as where's the role of the primary care providers within our community and community mental health services. So there's inpatient, outpatient component, as well as specialty care. Many folks that are unhoused have to access specialty care because of problems related to cardiology, orthopedics, GI difficulties, neurologic problems. So where does that coordination come into that care? And how, because many people that are unhoused are actually have insurance, they have the Oregon Health Plan, how do we partner with our CCOs, or coordinated care organizations, in making sure that our care continuum is effective, as well as the need for use of long-term care facilities, which can actually be in different realms, but usually are skilled nursing facilities. And oftentimes there's a lot of barriers related to care in those environments, and how do we attend to those? Clearly, medications, as Chris has pointed out multiple times, are a challenge for the unhoused and folks in these transitions. how do we work with our local pharmacies and different ways to leverage pharmacy resources to make sure medications there aren't gaps in medication, and that appropriate monitoring and follow-up is present. So we've outlined each one of those things. We have a series of measurements that we're looking at with respect to our readmission rates, with respect to how fast discharge planning goes, how services are utilized, that we'll engage as we go forward. And so we will, that is part of the agreement, is to commit to that measurement part so we can make sure that our outcomes are in fact good and certainly improve from what they currently are. There's a lot of organizations involved in this whole process, and as we've talked about before, have been engaged in the creation of this document as well as have provided a lot of input. So we wanted to present this document to this group because this is really, I think, as Commissioner Traeger pointed out, we're really focusing on this as a collaborative effort across different spheres, and this body brings together quite a bit of content knowledge. So Teresa put her contact information in. She's done an amazing job in coordinating this effort, and has kind of been our point person and our editor. So if you have comments or thoughts, please take Teresa's contact information down. Please read through the document that's in your packet. If there are things that we've missed, things that we've left out, things that you would want to see your healthcare partners in collaboration, trying to build that network or support around the unhoused community, we want to make sure that those thoughts are in this document. And again, appreciate the time. I realize we're kind of short on it, but if you do have comments, please send those to Teresa. And we can incorporate them into the agreement. We want this something that we can use over the next many years as we will continue to be challenged. I think that there is just a huge need, and there will continue to be a huge need, particularly to support the healthcare needs for this portion of our community. So, Chris, I'm going to hand it back to you, and however you'd like to proceed from there. But we would love to have input, and then we will bring back the formal document at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kincaid. Is there anybody who has any immediate conversation points that they want to share with Dr. Kincaid? If not, we can also reach out. I will pledge to commit to talking to Dr. Kincaid or Teresa by Tuesday. On the document, if there's any feedback I would like to share. Anybody else? Seeing none, thank you very much for your leadership, Teresa, and making sure that this committee work, this important work, is going through, and Dr. Kincaid for helping set the pathway with the greater picture. So that being said, let's have our public comment real quick. I believe Julia Rojas wanted to say a couple words, and then she also asked to say something on behalf of Central Latino afterwards. If there's anybody else who wants to join either comment, we have approximately 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the space. I just want to kind of say that Lane County and Central have such a great communication. So in the outreach aspect, when a lot of our families call Centro, we support them in navigating the website. So I really appreciate the website is really clear and easy for us to access, so we don't have to be looking around. So I wanted to kind of make that clear. And if a family doesn't have internet access, we support them also through doing it through their phone. And we are also sending text alert. It's all over our Facebook, Instagram. We also have a podcast that has that information. So I just want to kind of say that on behalf of Centro. And as a public comment, I'm just concerned a little bit, and I guess it's also through the agency, but just the turnaround time when a family calls the county for rental assistance, and then by the time it gets to Centro, and by the time it's dealt with the landlords, and I'm just wondering if you've seen anything, if you've seen or heard any feedback of what might have been works best, or the barriers that families have been faced with. I'm just concerned about that turnaround time with a lot of people working together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia, for your comments and your service. Can we ask someone from the county to reach out to Julia about her comments?
Yeah, I think Alex is still on this meeting, but I'll have Alex reach out to you, Julia, and follow up.
Excellent.
Ask for your email and the text in the chat box.
Well, thank you, everybody. It looks like we have a very exciting new year unfolding before us. We have a lot of things to prepare for and support. I hope that we all keep a positive and productive spirit as we navigate what have been dark times, but I really appreciate everyone taking the time to be here. Thank you for your service, and let's look forward to the next month's executive meeting. Have a great day.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye. Bye.